the network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is EDtech, Episode 18, recorded Friday, July 26th, 2013. AV Greg sings. Welcome to EdTech, the education-focused AV podcast put on to you by the fine folks at AVNation. My name is Tom Albright. I am your host because nobody else showed up in the studio today. With us, as always, from the great Northeast, his name is Scott Tyner. He works at Bates College. How are you, sir?
I'm doing wonderful. This nice July summer day.
It's gorgeous. It's crazy. It's actually 70 some odd here today in St. Louis, so it's weird. A weird July. Straight down the East Coast, working for George Mason. His name is Matthew Silverman. How are you, sir?
Doing well. Also having some beautiful 80-degree weather here in sunny Fairfax, Virginia.
Woohoo! Just down the street from Infocom International.
Yes.
And straight across the whole entire country, his name is Greg Brown. He works for UCLA, where it's always a sunny 65 or 70 degrees. How are you?
Hello, I'm just fine, and actually it's 66 and overcast, but I've got a jacket here in case I need to resort to it.
60, and you've got a jacket.
You have a portable heater. I mean, we don't want any emergencies.
Actually, I do have a portable heater. It's not on.
Lord. Seriously.
I run my AC until it hits 55.
Our space is because I have a portable heater because our offices don't have heat.
Because you live in Southern California. What do you want?
Consider that concept. And yeah, these great big old brick buildings get pretty freaking cold in the middle of winter sometimes.
You know, we may need to take away your geek card because if you don't have enough electronics equipment to generate that heat, you have a problem there.
That is true.
I can now see why the state of California has money problems. You're running electric heaters in every room, and you're wasting money on putting little magical signs in the floor.
Yeah, well, don't tell anyone.
All right.
Nobody listens to this, right?
No, at least nobody in California. They can't figure out how it works. This week,
does not surprise.
This month, we're going to talk about touching panels and stuff. And actually, there's one story where you can't touch it. They don't want you to. It's a touchless touch panel. It's weird. Chromecast, the latest and greatest things from the guys at Google. And this isn't the first time we talked about 4K on this show, but I've been trying to get away from it, and I freaking can't. So yeah, we're going to touch on 4K today. But first, we're going to tackle digital signage. Our fine friend here, Mr. Scott Tyner, is also a blogger for Rave Pubs, ravepubs.com. And I think this is your most recent blog, but I was interested in it because you talk about digital signage, and specifically in education. It's an interesting thing, and I don't know about you guys, but it depends on the organization. That determines, I think, like the culture, determines who is responsible for digital signage. So based on your writing, Scott, I take it that the AV guys in that department at Bates, you guys are the ones responsible for digital signage.
So we're the ones responsible for the technology of digital signage. You can compare what we do, and I'm assuming most people do this at this point, with what we do with our web pages. So we're responsible for the hardware. We're responsible for the support of the hardware, getting it installed. But as far as content goes, there's a distributed method of how content gets updated and created.
Okay. So talk about that. Talk about the technology part, because you're not you're not the graphics people for that, but you're the ones who spec the players and who spec the flat panels.
That's right. And so we started out digital signage probably 4 years ago. With just somebody coming in and saying, I've got this idea, I want to put it in one of our academic buildings, showcase some student work. And what they were asking us to do, because they thought it would save money, is to put a TV up with a Mac Mini behind it and run a PowerPoint. And to this day, I'm so thankful I convinced them not to do that, because we would have 16 Mac Minis running PowerPoint across campus right now, and my life would be very unpleasant. So we use there's just tons of software out there. We use a product called Tightrope Media Systems. It's networked, it's server based. For the content providers, it's web based, so they log on to a web interface. Our communications office has made some templates. They pick a template, they put a picture up, they put some text up, and they're updating their own content, and it looks really great. Can share content between signs and all that stuff. Some of the things that we're really starting to think about now, and my next column actually talks about this, is some of the different ways that you can use digital signage in waiting areas and kind of creating environments with them, as opposed to right now what we're doing a lot of is just point of transit. You're walking by a sign, you get 5 seconds to look at it, so you want to advertise something. Yeah. And we're thinking about some ways to do some more interesting things for people that have a few more minutes and not just those 5 seconds.
Well, and you also raise another point which I found interesting in the education world, honestly, that it's a phrase I don't hear very often, at least in the meetings I go to, and that's return on investment. The ROI for digital signage. Typically, at least for the ones that I've been in, it's more or less like, do we need this, and will it make sense? Not will it give us a return on our investment? Is that something that you guys talked about? And if it is, what is the ROI for digital signage?
We haven't. I think that it's something that would be really interesting for somebody to come up with. I'd love to see a really great presentation, and maybe they've existed, on methods of determining ROI, not just for digital signage, for anything in education. Our classrooms that we spend 50, 60, 70 grand on, and you're not doing something like doubling the amount of students, and but where's the return on investment on any of that stuff? I think that some of the new things we're thinking about, and I'll just give you an idea. In our admissions office, there's a waiting room, and so rather than putting a digital sign there that just runs through pictures every 5 seconds, you can use that to create an environment. You can put some videos up there of a student talking about their first year at Bates, and maybe put their Twitter tag up there. So really create an environment for them. And I think that in admissions, you can go, well, you can study that return on investment maybe a little bit, because you're kind of selling something in the admissions office. But when you walk into our science building and there's a sign on the wall that says, Bio 103 registration ends next week, I'd love to know how you figure out return on investment on that, because I don't.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear, if UCLA or George Mason, some of these bigger schools, maybe use some advertisements, sell advertisements. I mean, that's one thing we've thought of. We're smaller, so we don't do it, but that could certainly give you some, real return on investment.
Matt, go ahead.
It's funny you mentioned that. It's actually our auxiliary enterprises group, which is our revenue unit, handles digital signage at George Mason. We're not actually involved with it. And they did an RFP process where they ended up partnering with, I believe it's Orca, for a revenue-supported model for the digital signage products. So I don't know exactly what the breakdown is, or if we've actually seen a return on it, since it's not within our area. But the idea is that content is split between free advertised George Mason provided content and advertiser content. And most of our displays right now are in student union type areas or student convergence areas. The people who are doing this in academics largely have installed their own solutions. We actually have a lot of, as you mentioned, the Mac Mini Plus display solutions that people have rolled out, but we're also starting to see a lot of people roll out the relatively inexpensive monitor solutions, which have the very lightweight digital signage actually baked in. We're using some of that in our computer labs, so it's kind of a mixed environment, but the official solution right now is actually, like I said, a revenue-based solution.
But there is a way then to if it's a revenue-based solution, there's a way to get an ROI. But like Scott's talking about, there's not, I mean, You're right, Scott. I mean, how do you get the return on investment on a system, and depending on what the life cycle that you give it, depending on, and that also depends on the culture of the educational institution. We have a 7 or 8 year refresh on our projectors, so if the projector is $1,000 or $2,000 and you split that up over 8 years, then you have to have so many classes, right? Is that kind of what you're talking about, Scott?
Yeah, and I think that you need some creativity, and I think that Matt pointed out, he's got a department that works on generating this revenue, who takes care of digital signage. Ours, as I mentioned, we're divided between technical right now and content. But for example, our main academic building, we've got a digital sign right in. It's open until 2 or 3 in the morning. I don't think it's IT's job, but I don't know why somebody doesn't call Papa John's and say, hey, for $500 a year, do you want to have an ad that shows at 11 o'clock at night for 10 minutes, at 12 o'clock at night for 10 minutes with a QR code that somebody just snaps and they're dialed right into you and ordering a pizza? Yeah. I estimate our digital signage installations cost about $7,000 per system that we put on a wall. And so, even $500, you get, 4 or 5 of those and you've made some money back. But a lot of it's got to do with culture. And, Bates, I'm not sure that they want to give that image of somebody walking in and seeing a Papa John's ad sitting on the screen. But yeah, other than that kind of thing, how do you find that information? I still don't know.
Yeah. And that actually would be an interesting article to kind of delve into and take one of your high profile rooms, or maybe your premier room, and look at it and figure out how much money was spent on it, how many classrooms, and how many of those students, how much those kids are paying per credit hour or maybe per semester, and see how many semesters it would take to actually get your ROI.
Well, one interesting thing with that, and I used to talk about this a lot with project management in higher education, we don't necessarily always define return on investment as a monetary thing in higher ed, because depending on your institution, most of us are nonprofit or even state institutions. And because of that, you may want to look for a return on an objective or a goal, and it may not actually, your return may not be monetized. It may be something more abstract.
Yeah, but even nowadays, every college probably has issues, and state colleges, I think have bigger issues. But that's my own personal point of view. You've got to scrape every dime and make sure that you've got not necessarily a return as far as making a profit, but making sure that what you're purchasing, I guess, is achieving the goal. Yeah. Within the span of not making money, but how do I put this? Making sure you go ahead.
I was going to say what you're actually getting into is institutional assessment.
Okay.
And there are ways to look at it. And it really depends, I guess, where your mandate comes from. One of the mandates we've had at George Mason is to put basic technology in every classroom as fast as possible. We still haven't got to 100%. I think last I checked, we're somewhere around 80% or so. And what we've actually looked at is the return on those last classrooms doesn't justify the cost until we fully renovate the space. But you have to look at what the outcome you're trying to achieve. And sometimes, for us, it was as much about creating the environment of being a high-tech university as assisting faculty in their instruction. So again, it's often a non-monetary objective, and you just have to align your expenses towards whatever your institutional goals are, I guess is kind of how I look at it.
Yeah, I agree completely, Matt. I think that some things you can look at. I think that, and again, it's like now this fourth department we can work with. We've got an institutional research and analysis department at Bates who would need to do some of this work for us because, for example, let's say we want to advertise Italy, semester abroad in Italy. How can we say that the digital sign made 10 people aware of it that wouldn't have been aware of it before? or like you said, when you're installing a classroom, we are at 100% now. We do a little bit of that in my department, so that I can tell you that usage stats from our classrooms. And so while that's not a monetary thing, I can tell you it's being used. And do you study faculty satisfaction with it? Do you study faculty responses as to whether or not they feel they're more effective with that technology? All those things I find are really fascinating, but need to be answered, because as the first, I'm the first one who's going to say, I'll do it for you because you're paying for it, but don't put a sign on a wall that costs you $7,000 if you have no idea why you're putting it there.
Yeah, that's true. All right, Mr. Brown, you've been awfully quiet on this one. Are you just putting that out there?
Coming to me last, thinking that UCLA is going to be some bright, shining digital signage city on a hill, right? Well, prepare to be disappointed. Actually, digital signage is really kind of an embarrassment around here. I think there's really no central control or direction, so it's very much the Wild West. It's every department for themselves. So every little school or department has their sign or two or three, and everything is different sizes and shapes, and or they're too low or they're too high or they're too far out from the wall. And I mean, just some of the qualities of the installs are just downright alarming. And so it's really pretty much just a great big mess. We have one of the eating areas here that has probably 20 signs scattered about that they normally are playing music videos on, and they just upgraded their monitors, and they went with like what looks like a 40-inch monitor or something about that size. Unfortunately, they didn't change the brackets from the previous monitors, which are about 2 inches wider on each side.
Oh my.
So you have the black metal old brackets sticking out on either side of the new monitors. I mean, it's just really a classy look. And there's
but
another.
Think of the money they saved.
Yeah.
$100.
That's
we call those architectural features.
Oh, jeez.
When I hear all of this, one thing I do think about, though, is that this is a huge market for an integrator or an installer, even an advertising company, to come in. And if you're really smart, you could go to a place like UCLA as an advertising company and sell them a plan and a strategy. I think there's a lot of money in a place like that. I mean,
you'd have to get
state of California probably doesn't have any money to spend. But
well, yeah.
You'd have to get 200 departments to agree on it to make it happen, though.
Well, and that, Scott, what you just described is actually, from what I understand, our relationship with Orca is that they provide us a turnkey service.
Oh wow.
So, and that includes the revenue generation, that they actually bring the advertising to the table. It's and they manage the whole infrastructure and the back end. We just basically, I guess, I don't know if we pay for install or that's included, but then we just provide the GMU specific content, which actually goes directly into their system. So.
If you actually thought about it, I'm getting excited here because I want to join this company, Orca. If you thought about it, they could almost go give you all this stuff free, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
They get your advertisements, and they just give you a little kickback. If you do this right.
And I know they're not the only player in that. There are a couple of companies who are actually doing this where, again, and I think, I don't know, we get something like 50% of the impressions or something like that. So it's still very much a GMU feel. But, it's really, at least in our environments, these are largely in student unions, a win-win-win, because we're okay with advertising because we already have other types of advertising in these environments.
We have a series of digital signs here in another of the eating places on campus that are promoting a bunch of events coming up in September. And at this point, you're starting to think, okay, they're getting a jump on what's coming up for fall. And well, No, I go through there every week or two, and I realize that it's the same series of ads that they've been running for the last year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so content is also a huge issue here. But
so when you show up for that concert in September, there's nobody there, you'll know why.
They still advertising the Beatles concert that they had. Never mind.
Right. I think the bigger story here, however, is that there is in fact delivery pizza in Lewiston, Maine.
Oh, come on.
Oh, come on. I told you, we got like 60,000 people.
That's a lot.
We're a rocking metropolis.
You realize you're talking to the UCLA boy when you said that, right? They have 3 hockey teams, 4 baseball teams.
Hey, listen, we've got the Twin Cities over here, Lewis and Auburn, and so we call where UCLA is, we call that the other LA.
Very nice, very nice. I like that. All right. Let's kind of continue this conversation because a lot of people use digital signage for emergency notification. Dun, dun, dun. Dear Lord, this was when was that? It was a few years ago, probably 10 now. There was an incident at a nightclub in Delaware, and just different. It was a fire at a rock show, and it was a horrible accident, and people lost their lives. Delaware was like one of the first states to say, look, you know what? In any large group, emergency notification was one of these things. You have to have signs up, and you have to give people, proper egress notifications and this, that, and the other. And then, of course, we had, the every month or so, it almost feels like, there's some sort of school tragedy. So almost every single state has mandated, hey, you have to have some sort of plan on your educational facility that allows people to be notified, allows buildings to be either locked down or secured in some way. So, Mr. Greg Brown, what does UCLA have?
Oh God, we're on a roll here today.
Never mind.
Yeah, we didn't have anything. I mean, the rooms have the the fire strobes and annunciators, but we didn't have any sort of campus system. And being the I think the budget-minded public university that we are, they put a bunch of these like voice of God speakers out on a handful of buildings scattered around campus. Up on towers, the idea being that they are can broadcast tones and messages so loud that anybody anywhere can hear them and understand them. And I remember the first time they fired it off, first of all, it's just, well, it probably works because, I mean, it's just this really obnoxious tone, it says, the first time I heard it, it's like, my God, somebody is strangling a goat over a PA system.
Nice.
But then the voice fires up, and the nearest one to me is on the adjacent building. It's on the top of I can see it from my window here. It's on the top of a 3-story building. I'm on the ground floor of the adjacent building. And whenever the announcement goes off, what I hear is something along these lines. And it's
the sound effect, man.
It's continued that way. Apparently, it's really, really clear and deathly loud if you're up on the 3rd floor, but if you're down on the ground floor or even outside below it, it's almost unintelligible. It's just really an amazing. I guess it probably gets us off of some legal hook in some way, but it's something which doesn't seem to have been done with any sort of technical or honest capability sort of vision whatsoever.
Well, it's funny you mention intelligibility, and this is something that was brought up in the article, and I guess once again I'm putting my standards hat on, but if any AV folks get roped into being involved with this conversation, something you have to think about is NFPA 72, which is the updated National Fire Protection section, which deals with mass notification. And there were some new requirements put in the latest version, which actually talk about intelligibility of notification and have measurement requirements. Now, whether or not your locality has adopted the recent version is, talk to your code guys. But there's a really good white paper on Infocom's website, which talks about how NFPA 72 affects AV professionals. Because it's definitely something that if someone says, hey, we need your help with mass notification, and which may happen to any of us in higher ed, you want to be aware of, because there actually are some requirements now.
And speaking of standards, Matt, what's the standard that you just worked on that's open right now for public comment?
Sure. That is the Audiovisual Systems Performance Verification Standard, which if you go to infocom.org/standards, you'll see a link to go review and comment on it.
So go comment. Tell Matt how good of a job he did. So, Mr. Tyner.
Good job, Matt.
Be quiet. Mr. Tyner, what kind of emergency notification do you guys have?
Well, we've got the voice of God speakers, and thankfully we only use them when we test. And I think, but we've also got your standard email blasts, your text blasts, your phone blasts. And I'll tell you, I think one of the things we all really need to think about is the and I think actually this is for law enforcement, not necessarily us, but last spring there was a situation in my hometown, not in Lewiston, but in the town that I live where my kids go to school, where they had to lock down the schools. It turned out not to be anything serious, but we all got, me and my wife, our cell phones are ringing, get this automated message, your kid's school has been locked down. And so I actually wonder what the value of that is, because I'll tell you what it did. Even though they said not to, it sent half the parents of the school to the school to go get their kids out of school. It just, so I think that you've got to think about all of that and what the purpose is. And so for me, these voice of God speakers, the purpose of those would be to tell people, unfortunately, there's something going on in this campus and you need to find cover immediately. Because like Greg said, other than that, other than get on the ground and find cover, you don't understand what these things are saying. I think, and I'm going to spoil another article that's coming up here for me, is about how we in AV can talk to people about some of the things that we can do. For example, how do we get it so that in a classroom we could activate a projector with an emergency message, even though it's not on? How could we get it to show up on a touch panel for a professor in a room? Without these kind of big, loud announcements through everybody. If you're putting class capture and cameras and microphones in rooms, are there some ways that you can tie that in with your security office so that people can see into classrooms if there's an emergency? So I think there's a lot of things that we can do in AV and IT, and I think it's one of those things you hope to never use, but if you do need it, it would be invaluable and save lives.
Yeah, absolutely would. I mean, we have the texting like everybody else, and phone calls and this, that, and the other. Emails go out. But I'm like, Scott, I'm actively researching how we can tie our security system into our control system and how to take over projectors and how to zone it to where if it's one specific building, well, security hits that one button and it can, if we have the capability, locks the doors and locks everybody in the classroom if that's what they want, but turns on projectors, goes to a specific screen and says there's an emergency, please stay put, or there's an emergency, do XYZ.
Well, one of the best examples I've seen of this was done by a friend of mine named Alan Durocher, who works over at a little school called USC, which you might have heard of.
Never heard of it. And
yeah, our crosstown rivals. And they use a couple of different systems. In part, they use Global Viewer Enterprise by Extron and some other back-end stuff, such that they have cameras in all of the classrooms. And in some areas, it varies a lot from school to school. The idea of putting cameras in the classrooms becomes a big political football. it is here. You can't just put live cameras in without the instructors knowing about it, sort of thing. But they were able to sell this as a we won't record audio, but we will record video, and it will be a security backup. And that's how they were able to get everybody's buy-in on that. And they literally he'll do talks at the show and stuff like that. And it's the fascinating talk he gives. He'll have an iPad, and he will call up the rooms, and he literally can scroll in his iPad through all of these little live images of all of his classrooms, can resize them, make them bigger or smaller, or make, look into a room, full screen and see what's going on. They also use it for diagnosing problems people are having with the AV, and also in some cases for helping instructors deal with the AV. But just a very fascinating system, and it was that security aspect that really let them advance it and go forward with it and get everybody's buy-in.
No, absolutely. You are listening to EDtech. That guy right there is Greg Brown. Scott Tyner is here, and Matthew Silverman. Continuing on, Jeremy Birch, who also writes for Rave Pubs, is one of Mr. Tyner's compadres there. Had an interesting article, and basically he compares two different products, and I'm going to say different in quotation marks because that's kind of the point of the article. The title is "One of These Things is Exactly Like the Other." He compares Crestron's Air Media, the AM100 with, is it Cuomo?
I think so.
Cuomo QWPS 100. Basically, here's the specs on them. They're both the same size. They're both the same weight. They have basically the same connectors on the back. They do both basically the same thing. They have a couple differences. Crestron obviously will tell you if there are any Crestron devices on the network. You can do a customizable welcome screen. There are 32 connected sources on the Crestron. There's only 20 on the Cuomo for some reason. And then he gets down to the price. $1,600 list for the Crestron, $500 for the Cuomo. And then he asks a very interesting question. He says, is the Crestron name and the other added benefits worth 3 times the price? So, Mr. Silverman, granted, these guys are probably OEMing them from someone, or one of them is OEMing them from the other. Are the added 12 sources and this, that, and the other worth the list price difference?
Well, first off, I actually am pretty sure they're both OEMing them from AWind.
Okay.
And because AWind has a product called the WIPG 1000, which, if you take a look at it, looks awfully like both of them. And as I remember from seeing it at the show, it sure looked like the internal OS on the Crestron one was actually pretty close to the AWind one. That being said, I believe AWind, which, as you remember from a previous show, was purchased by Barco earlier this year, makes something like 80% of the wireless presentation stuff on the market. So that's not a surprise. The question, I guess, that I look at this is, what does it bring to the table? And for me, when I look at it, one, no one's going to be paying $1,600 a unit from Crestron. If you are, you got ripped off. I don't know the last time anyone actually paid retail for Crestron.
I'll tell you a story later.
Oh, boy. But what I've generally seen from Como products on the market, and again, I don't quite know where this one is, their retail is generally somewhere in the ballpark of what Street is on their products.
Okay.
So maybe it's about a $400 on Street price. But I think the Crestron product is probably more like $800-900 Street, maybe even $1,000. What for me, though, it brings the enterprise level of integration, which the other products don't have. And that's worth a lot if I'm designing this into a system. If I'm doing just like a one-off display and we want to connect wirelessly, probably the Como product would work. But if you're looking at it as part of an integrated product, particularly if you're a heavy Crestron environment, being able to build it in programmatically to the rest of your system is really, really important. And, taking this outside of our world is one of the reasons, like, you look in networking, why people design complete Cisco environments. It's because everything will work together. So you're paying for that. You're paying also for a higher level of tech support and things like that. Are we paying too much for the Air Media? I don't know yet. I haven't actually had a chance to go hands-on and evaluate one. But my guess is they did a lot of market research to figure out what the price point is, because the Como product and the, AWIN's own product have been on the market for a while. So I think you can't just look at this at the commodity level like you can a display or a projector as part of an integrated system. But if you're looking at it as a standalone product, you're probably going to be better with a less expensive product if you don't have to worry about integration.
That's a good point. Mr. Tyner, the apples to apples, and Matt's right. If you're paying list price for a Crestron system, send me the name of your integrator, and we'll go slap them around. Is it worth maybe the $400 or $500 extra that you might end up paying for the Crestron product?
Well, if we're going to compare apples to Crestron, then you're talking about, what, $100 compared to $900. But no, I agree completely with Matt. There are programming hooks and all kinds of other things in this Crestron product that, and I know, Matt, from what he said before, does all this kind of stuff too, where you're trying to see if there's a signal there, and you trigger other things if there is a video signal that you can't get out of any other product that Crestron's putting in there. I think I think the really interesting thing that I thought about when I read this article was, and some other conversations we've had, is how important it is for a company to get you initially tied into them. Because, for those of us who are tied into Crestron, it's so hard now to not buy something that they put out, because we're so reliant on all of the little things that they add. And we've had a discussion offline about what could you do to if you're going to switch over to another thing, and some people are like, I can't really now. And as I look and I think, oh, maybe I'd try this product from this company. It's almost like I'd have to do that in a complete full room, and knowing it's not going to integrate with my other rooms. It's so amazing how important it is, that first initial contact and getting your product in.
No, absolutely, and that's one thing is you may be also fall in love with a completely different product line, but you have invested heavily in another one, and so you're right, you can't go anywhere. Mr. Brown, is all kidding aside with the AirPlay, and Scott's right. If you're going to do apples, the real Apple, comparing that to Crestron, absolutely. But if we're going to compare the Crestron to the Cuomo, is it worth the $400 or $500 that you're going to end up paying?
Yeah, I looked it up, and the A+ price, which is what all of us higher ed folks would get, is $1,000.
There you go.
On the price list right now. So sort of in between there, 6,000 versus 600. So it's not quite $1,000, not the $1,000 difference there. We were initially looking at, but still, that's a chunk of money, and I think. It depends on what you're doing. If I'm building a glitter room that's on a deadline that a lot of important people are going to see, I'm probably going to start out with the Crestron box if it's got to interface with the system in any way, shape, or form. Because the control system is kind of the heart of the system, and I can speak to my experience with now Crestron and Extron. If you have a problem in the control system, those folks will go above and beyond, pretty much helping you figure out what the problem is if it's within their equipment. It's when you get out into the outlying pieces and some of these other companies that you might start to have problems. That being said, if I was going to build up other rooms and I had a chance to maybe fiddle around with the, prototype up the system for the second round and screw around with it a bit and do some troubleshooting, I might also get myself a Cuomo box and slip it in there and see what happens. 600 or what is it, $500, not much ventured, not much gained, not much lost.
No.
Well, one of the things that tells me that Como box is intended for these smaller installs is the fact that they've got a wireless access point in there.
Right.
I hate any product that comes in and tells me that, it'll act as a wireless access point. You guys will love it. And it's like, actually, if you say that in front of my network engineers, you've just set me back 3 years. So,
Ooh, yeah.
The thought that and Crestron used to do some of this. They, with their wireless touch panels, be like, well, just go get a Linksys at Walmart and use that. Yeah, okay, right. And they don't do that anymore because they know that's just ridiculous. But so I think that this company's, they're maybe looking at some of the smaller elementary schools or something like that actually might integrate that wireless access point. But anybody who walks into, I'm imagining George Mason or Bates or UCLA or any corporation knows the network people, and rightfully so, are not going to just let random access points get put on the network.
No.
And you hit the point that I was thinking about, which is what made the Crestron product so attractive to me is it doesn't have wireless. I can work with my networking team to put it on our network where it needs to be and then take it from there. But I think you're right about the Como product is that, if you're, building, you're K-12, you're building a classroom probably on a grant or something, it's a fantastic way to get you there quickly. And it's finding the right, the right tool for the right application. And I think it's something which is becoming a little bit of a challenge within AV right now, as we're seeing a lot of commoditization in certain product lines, understanding which product lines you should accept commoditization and which ones you really need to look for differentiation.
No, that's a very good point because when it comes down to it, it has to work. So.
This is not part of our storyline, but I just have to plug this in there for a second, Matt, because I know that you'll appreciate this. The state of Maine has recently decided that instead of laptops, they're going to give all middle schoolers iPads. And along with that, what they've done is given, listen to this, this is the best part, Apple TVs. And they're going to put an Apple TV in every classroom because that way students can just present their stuff wirelessly. Pretty cool, right?
Lord.
I was in our local public high school the other day, and there were literally 150 Apple TVs sitting there, and I thought, good luck to you.
So somewhere there is a middle school IT director crying in a corner.
Yeah. Why do you hate me?
Yeah, Matt just
exactly.
Or Scott just said good luck. Meanwhile, the IT guy standing next to him passed out.
Yeah. You
had a heart attack on the spot.
Jeez, yeah, or what would be even better is if the AV guy says, hey, I'll just do this, and the IT guy won't mind at all. Yeah.
Well, of course, since we're talking about K through 12 schools, the IT guy, the AV guy, the help desk guy, and the computer repair guy are all the same guy.
Well, that's true, too. Yeah, that is true, too.
And none of those guys have any clue what kind of a disaster they're in right now.
Jeez, wow.
Yeah, LA Unified School District made the decision also a few weeks ago to just roll out iPads on, I forget exactly what the scale is, but yeah, some sort of massive scale across many grades. Yeah.
Good luck to them. We're going to, I don't think we've ever talked about racks on any of our shows. So we're going to take a stab at it. What the hey? One of the fine gentlemen on this podcast forwarded this to us. It is a Lowell Model SLS sliding latching shelf. Okay. Now, nothing really exciting. I mean, it's a rack shelf, right? And it has a sliding latch. It's a sliding shelf, and it's latches and that. Okay, cool, awesome, groovy.
It does have, now to be fair, it does have stops at a number of different positions, so it won't roll in and out like most of them will.
Yeah. So you look at features, and it's a rack mount shelf, and measures 17.5 wide by 14.625 deep. It's 16 gauge, weighs 13 pounds. It has a 15-pound load capacity, a black semi-gloss enamel finish, slightly more than 1U panel.
Do you think he's drawing this out a little bit?
Slightly more than 1U. What the freak? So if you don't know what panel space is, a rack unit is
my frustration with it.
A rack unit is 1.75 inches, right?
Yes.
This is 2.5 inches, so it's not even a 2 rack unit. It's like almost there.
And 2 rack units would be a mere 3.5 inches, 1.75 plus 1.75.
Yeah.
But no, we have to go 1 and a little more than a half. Are you?
Why?
Well, hence my
frustration.
Yes, because I know there are people who do not put rack plates in every rack space. When they build a rack, they can do something like this, but I think most of us are in the world where, if we don't put a rack plate, we have, little wandering fingers of aspiring AV engineers looking to rewire our systems for us. And so it looked for a minute like it was going to fit a really nice need that I've got, but then it's like 1.5 rack here. It's like, and it's like, what the hell, guys? And if you're going to do something like that, give me like a half rack space blank that I can put in there to make it a 2 rack unit, or just make the darn thing, another. I don't know why they couldn't have made this a little thinner and made it 1 rack space really, but
no, the half rack spacer is one of the accessories you can buy with this.
Is there?
I don't know.
I don't think there is.
No, I don't
I looked.
And the issue, we do blanks as well, Greg. And the issue for me is not just it's the lack of logic that seems to have gone into this, which is it will take 2 spaces in your rack.
Yes,
it will. So make it 2 spaces.
Exactly.
And they're not even trying to. I mentioned to you that I did buy one a while ago, not from this manufacturer, from another, that didn't even exactly say that it was larger than 1RU, and you couldn't stick something on top of it, and it really ticked us off. They come right out and say it. Slightly larger. That's my best part.
Yeah.
Well, that's like what? 3/4 of an inch. I mean, it's not like it's one little tiny bit, but is that it just? There's no logic. There's no reason to go. Well, we don't really want a 2-space one. It just. What does Mr. Standards think about that? That's what I want to know.
Yeah, it's not like they don't know how big a rack unit is. They make racks.
Yeah.
Maybe they're going to start a new standard for racks.
Oh, there we go.
No, I get
Has anybody seen fractional? I know we have the half rack width, and I applaud. Who was that? Was Extron in Middle Atlantic?
Extron started.
Right?
Yeah.
It was Extron, and there's a couple other people, and there's at least
for that. I think that was
at least a couple people who got on board with that one.
A smart move there. That's a useful thing. I haven't used it yet, but I can see the use in that. But this vertically fractional with no alternative. I'm sorry, Matt. Go ahead.
Yes.
No, I guess I'm having a hard time having the same level of emotion over a rack, but I guess everyone has their own little, passionate items. For me, I took one look at this, and I'll be honest, and I asked Greg before we started the show. I said I just didn't get it, because I was like, I know another manufacturer, or I could buy a 2-rack unit one, which does the same thing if I needed that. So, yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. Finally, we're going to talk about 4K, and I don't believe I'm going to do this. A couple of different ones, actually. Dell has
a higher ed show. I thought this was a higher ed show.
Well, it is, and first of all, that's why I'm going to start with the Dell one. The Dell has a UHD, and if you don't know what UHD is, UHD is not quite 4K, so they call it ultra high definition. It is actually 3840 by 2160, so it's not exactly 4K. 4K is double HD, double 1080p. Dell has a new 32-inch UHD display, and then you look at TCL. So they have probably the first sub-$1,000 4K monitor that I've seen. It's a 50-inch 4K TV for $999. Good night. Matt, is 4K in general, because Greg's right, this is an education show, so let's put the education spin on this. Is this something we're going to have to worry about, and if so, when? Just 4K in general.
Yes, but in specific applications. And I've actually started having a lot of conversations both at George Mason, but also with people just in the field outside of George Mason, that we're starting to see a lot of our science and engineering folks really start thinking about 4K from an application point of view. If they're doing design work, if they're doing visualization work, you really can't have enough resolution. And I was looking at the 99, actually both of these items. I looked at the $99 panel and I said, I bet I know that the director in our IT department may actually go out and buy one of those and install it himself, because he's done stuff like this before. And while it may not be something which we feel is the greatest panel of all time, the idea of having that resolution is very important for some of their applications. Similarly, I'm looking at both the Dell monitor and also this whole slew of new super high resolution laptops which have been coming out lately, and saying I think I'm going to start seeing, again, specialized requests for this in a lot of our environments. So I would say I put this on the next year timeline where we're going to start seeing pressure to deploy this for application-specific things.
Wow. Scott, when are we going to start worrying about 4K?
I think I agree with Matt. It's when we get to a point that people need it. And I think, when you start talking about really large screens, certainly the resolution even becomes more and more important. The truth is, I have paid very little attention to the whole 4K issue just because I don't know. I guess I'm focusing on other things, and for me, with 4K, it's like when somebody comes and tells me I need it, I guess I'll pay more attention to it. This is probably not the best way to approach it, but it's my method right now.
You need it. It's 4K. Are you kidding me? You'll be behind until we get to 8K, and then you'll be really behind. And then they'll have 16K with OLED, AM OLED. That would be awesome.
I'm waiting until I can take a 16K 100-inch diagonal, fold it up in my back pocket. Then I'm going to go for that.
Oh, give them time, Mr. Tyner. At least that's what they'll claim until you actually sit on it and break it. Greg, when are we going to have to start worrying about 4K?
I think 4K will be a bigger story in higher ed in probably about 4 or 5 years, once we get past all of the first generation digital systems that we are all rushing to try and roll out now, and 4K has had a chance to mature, and those first generation systems start to get a little bit long in tooth. I think then more of us are going to be looking at it seriously.
That's a good analogy. One quick question before I let you guys go. Are we out of the 3D woods yet? Like, did we pass that by?
We're out of the woods. We're out of the woods.
Oh my goodness!
Who was that, and what were they doing?
That was Mr. Greg.
I think Greg's been drinking during the show.
I wish he would share.
It's not even noon over there yet. Almost, it's not even
It's
noon
5
o'clock.
o'clock somewhere. Yeah.
I've been drinking too. It's not even noon o'clock.
You've been drinking too. Okay. So Matt, you're the only sober one. Wait a minute, you're the second sober one.
You just.
Is there something?
I know. I just. It is noon here, so I don't know if that makes it any better. Yeah. But seriously, did we bypass that horrible thing?
The 3D. I think it's an application specific thing. I was on a listserv the other week. I actually saw a 3D rear its head where someone actually did have an application for it, and they were talking about, well, how do we deploy it?
Did you say you don't?
Yeah. No, I just don't see mainstream, need for 3D. Again, if someone is doing visualization, with a lot of the science programs, you may have a need, but I just never see 3D being something we put into all of our classrooms. It just doesn't seem to have that mainstream adoption or need.
Okay, very good. I think we'll leave that be. Let that be the last word, unless Greg, you'd like to sing again.
No.
Okay, good. With us has been Greg Brown from UCLA. How can people find you, sir?
Let's see. LinkedIn, and probably by the time this show makes it to air, if it makes it to air, I will have another blog up on Infocom All Voices blog
good.
Location, spot, place.
And probably at his local karaoke bars.
I was going to say Broadway, Well, he is right next to Hollywood, so he could, Mr. Scott Tyner.
We're all in show business here.
We are. Oh, no, you are. Scott Tyner is a blogger for Rave Pubs and also works at Bates College. Where can people find you, sir?
I am on Twitter mostly. I am also on LinkedIn. And, of course, they can always find me once a month right here.
Oh, very nice. Thank you. And last but not least, my standards, the standard of my standards, Matthew Silverman from George Mason. Where can people find you, sir?
At this point, LinkedIn mostly.
Okay. You can also check out Mr. Silverman on the latest edition of Infocom Today, talking about the very standard that you can go check out. Actually, go to infocom.org/standards, and you can get the standard, and you can comment on it. Until when, Matt?
Until August 19th.
Until August 19th. Very good. If you'd like to follow me, do it at your own risk. It's TD David Albright, ALBRIGHT. But more importantly for me and everybody here at AVNation, go by the website, if you would, please, avnation.tv. avnation.tv, there's this show. There's a show about control, live, staging and events, social, all sorts of other things. And also we do our weekly AV Week. So check that out if you would. avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. This has been EdTech.